Good evening. I am Fabricio Assunção from the Spiritist Society of Bournemouth. I warmly welcome you to tonight's event brought to you by the Spiritist Society of Bournemouth and our friends at Poole Christian Spiritualist Church. We wish you all a happy, healthy, and blessed New Year. We are very pleased to have our guest speaker, Dr. Umberto Schubitter, join us online tonight from Brazil. We send a very warm welcome to you, Umberto. First, a few details about our speaker. Umberto is a well-known author of books and articles on spirituality, philosophy, and comparative religion. He is an editor of the Primavera Press, a work in the Spiritist Society Primavera, and is a lecturer in the Department of Philosophy at the Federal University of Juiz de Fora in Brazil. Umberto has a university doctorate in science and religion, and he has also undertook research at Oxford University. The subject of Dr. Umberto Schubitter's talk tonight is Leon Denis. This year marks the 175th anniversary of Leon Denis' birth in France in 1846. Leon Denis is one of the great names in the history of Spiritism. After the death of Allan Kardec, Leon Denis developed and promoted the philosophy and doctrine of Spiritism and did much to consolidate the Spiritist movement during the early years of the 20th century. It is a good way that we commemorate tonight his 175th anniversary of Leon Denis' birth. Umberto, we look forward very much to your talk. But before we talk, let us go to Lawrence Savill at the Poole Christian Spiritualist Church for our opening prayer. Lawrence, over to you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Fabricio. And welcome back, Umberto. It was a pleasure to meet you. It just seems like a lifetime ago, but it was only a couple of years ago. So if we could just join in, just quietly, just still our minds for this short time. Just immerse ourselves in this moment, in this presence, in this being. Divine and infinite spirit, as we step into a new year, help us to remember that we are all here on this journey to experience all the challenges that life has for us and to deal with those challenges by reaching deeper within ourselves, to deal with everything justly and fairly, and to remember that one truth: we live but one life. Through various incarnations, both here and beyond the veil, that one life thread is unbroken and continuous. So in that knowledge and that understanding, help us to understand that this reflection of that same life thread is so important, with many opportunities to assist, to heal, to uplift, to send out love, and to be true to the principles and practices that we are taught by higher masters. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Lawrence. So it's now my pleasure to hand it over to Umberto Schubitter for his talks entitled Leon Denis, Philosophy of Immortality. Over to you, Umberto.
Hello, my friends. It is my privilege to share this moment with you and to talk about the luminous thought of Leon Denis. I prepared the presentation to make my ideas more rational and understandable, and to avoid the worst side effects of lack of language skill. Well, the first thing I would like to emphasize in my talk today is that we are culturally biased to believe that the idea of immortality is a religious idea, or specifically a religious belief. This leads to the problem that we cannot handle the concept without automatic and natural references in our mind to religion, religious doctrines, and creeds. Actually, quite many philosophers worked with the idea of immortality from a purely rational scientific perspective. And as far in the past as the time of Plato, Socrates, and even before them, we also know that for many cultures, the traditional spiritual wisdom was not directly associated with a religion. Many spiritual masters believed to be thinkers or people who were somehow in the pursuit of truth and in the pursuit of a spiritual dimension of life, not exactly as prophets, saints, or religious revealers. Well, considering that, I will start the presentation emphasizing this philosophical character of the question of the immortality of the soul, or survival of our conscience and personality after bodily death. Some advantages of philosophical approach to the idea of survival of consciousness. One very obvious advantage is that religious doctrines and creeds depend on particular adherence to this or that faith. Philosophical arguments and empirical evidence, on the other hand, are universally valid independently of particular faiths. This is very important, because if we want to say that something is a reality, that it is true, nowadays in the modern world, it is easier to address the subject from a universal, rational, scientific, or philosophical perspective, rather from a culturally biased religious revelation. And we are here as a scientist of religion, we are presuming that every religion, no matter how much of spiritual revelation it could contain, is also a product of culture, a product of finite human minds. So every religious proposal, every religious doctrine is also, not exclusively, it would be reductionism to say that it is exclusively so, but it is also to some extent a cultural product, a product of its time and nationality or cultural environment. The second advantage is that the philosophical arguments point to the fact that the idea is so widespread and rationally consistent that it should refer to some natural order of things. Well, these very words were presented by, for example, Plato and many other philosophers, many other intellectuals, scientists, artists, and also spiritual masters that try to handle the problem of human survival in an afterlife. And if we consider only two canons, the two great philosophers that did so, we could mention Plato and Aristotle, respectively founders of critical thinking. It is the case of Plato, and analytical thinking, Aristotle. tools that are very present in our modern and scientific view of the world. And these great thinkers, they believed, or they meditate and reflected about the condition of human personality, the nature and essence of human personality, individuality, essence. And they concluded that it would be irrational to believe that our eternal part, our permanent part, which is our intellect, our rationality, our soul, to say something, to use a more popular word, it is irrational to believe that this part of our character and personality is subject to the same sort of disaggregation and destruction that our transitory and material parts are subject to. And this means basically that immortality of the soul is not proved as a matter of fact, but it is more rational to expect that our souls, our spirits, our personalities will remain in some sort of afterlife, then be destroyed or annihilated of some sort. And this is I cannot talk about the arguments in themselves, but I can briefly point to the fact that part of philosophical tradition and part of Western thinking deny the idea of immortality of the soul based on the mistaken prejudice that Aristotle rejected this idea. And since Aristotle is considered by many a more keen and sharp intellect than Plato himself, many people believe that Plato was also biased by religious tendencies and prejudices, maybe superstitions even. And Aristotle, the real scientist, so to say, would have proved the idea false. But the fact is that Aristotle was actually only much more discreet than Plato. And he spoke about the immortality of the soul in a very indirect way. From the ethical perspective, he said, well, there is a part of our character that is really not subject to change. We have a sort of intellectual character or higher part of our soul or our spirit that can possibly remain, and we could actually expect to remain after bodily death. And in his cosmology, in his ideas about the structure of nature, he also stressed that most probably we could identify in nature the necessity of a supreme intelligence or an underlying intelligence that would be responsible for the natural order. And our intellectual part, or the higher part of our soul, would be in harmony with this supreme intelligence. So the second, or the main and most important philosopher beside Plato, was also favorable to the idea of the immortality of the soul. Well, the modern spiritualism and the English-speaking world are quite related, jumping from Plato and Aristotle to modern days. We could remember that modern spiritualism emerged as a new attention or a new highlight to the spiritual phenomena, but it quite quickly produced new sorts of, or a new branch, a whole new structure of ideas about how could be and what could be these things that we call spirits and spiritual life. Well, the modern spiritualism is pretty much a phenomena of the English-speaking world. It started in the US in close relationship with Britain, but it was also universal. It has had a universal character to some extent. So we can identify previous happenings in Germany and very important development of this movement in France, Italy, and even Russia. Well, modern spiritualism has an emphasis on experimentation and understanding of the phenomena, the spiritual phenomena. Modern, in other environments, belief in the survival of consciousness to bodily death is very explicit in the British culture since ever, since mythologies and folklore. We can spot open references to it in Hamlet, as in the work of Tolkien or in the work of C.S. Lewis. From the oldest tales to the very popular Harry Potter series, British literature has been dealing with apparitions of ghosts and the afterlife in a very, very consistent way, while in many other cultures, the most religious authors often have to hide their convictions under the cape of symbolism or literary intricacy. So they basically hide these convictions about the immortality of the soul so well that many readers cannot spot them, cannot realize they had these convictions, these beliefs. Well, modern spiritualism then only gave occasion to the manifestation of this old disposition of the English-speaking cultures and gave direction to the natural curiosity in the form of scientific research. Well, we could name a great number of people related to this modern spiritualist research, or the psychic research, as it was called in England, metapsychic in France, or spiritism in continental Europe. But we made a shorter list with some very heavy intellectual names. Both in the new and the old worlds, the phenomena that led to a cultural passion for ghost stories was now a subject in the hands of the greatest minds, such as William Crookes, one of the greatest greatest physicists of the 19th century, one that paved the way to more modern research on radioactivity. William James, the founder of scientific psychology, pretty much one of the greatest minds in Americas ever, a very broad intellectual that was one of the most remarkable philosophers in Americas in all times, and the founder of psychology as a science, and also very interested in spiritual phenomena and very committed to understand what they meant. This is very relevant to to stress, because William James, among these others, very specific in the way he addresses the question of spirituality, of religious life, in a very, very modern way, with very, very modern concerns. He is not giving concessions to superstition or to belief or to faith, but he's trying to base them on strict and rigorous scientific research. Frederick Myers, great humanist that spent most of his career researching the occult or the psychic phenomena or the spiritualist phenomena, mostly from a sort of psychological perspective. Henry Sidgwick, very important Cambridge philosopher, and Darwin's co-worker or Darwin's contemporary, Alfred Russel Wallace. Well, names that were so fundamental for the constitution of modern sciences, as we know now, were also persuaded that some natural, observable facts demanded a more radical understanding of the spirit, of our intimate nature or essence. It was Allan Kardec from France, however, that brought modern spiritualism to a methodical, philosophical form. It is impossible to talk about Leon Denis and Leon Denis' contribution also without mentioning his great master and inspiration, Allan Kardec, who Denis tried to emulate in theory, posture, and behavior. It was from Kardec that he absorbed his deep seriousness and his tenderness of heart, an unshakable faith, and developed a faith developed as a consequence of critical approach to spiritual life, and also a lifelong commitment to contribute to the moral development of the human family, of the human race, human species. Kardec's philosophy was also a philosophy of immortality. Maybe with Plato, we could say Kardec was one of the greatest philosophers of immortality of all times. He is a very original thinker that gave sense to much of the spiritual phenomena that we otherwise could only observe until his work. And he argued for a comprehensive interpretation of the spiritual phenomena on the light of a broader concept of God. The main philosophical concept for Kardec was the concept of God, not only for his philosophy, but for philosophy in general. Actually, in the Genesis, Kardec suggests that the concept of God is the cornerstone for every and each philosophical system and philosophical view that could possibly be thought of. So even materialism and atheism would be, in Kardec's view, based on the idea of a structure and fundamental ground for reality. So this fundamental ground of reality, which is matter or whatever it is, chance, would be the god of the materialists. A god that would act through natural means, never contradicting itself. It was very important because on the line of enlightenment, Kardec was very concerned with self-contradictions in religion doctrine. A God that would love every of its creatures without condition and could not rationally expect that all of them would hold exactly the same beliefs, the same ideas. Why should all creatures have the same beliefs, the same ideas, the same rituals, the same books, and the same commandments? And well, why should they follow the same religion? So Kardec's idea and Kardec's method did not lead to the construction or the creation of a new religion. It has religious consequences in the sense that we have a natural tendency to a personal contact with God, with the infinite nature of reality, the ground of reality. In that sense, Kardec's ideas have religious consequences, but they are not religious in the sense that they are based on a dogma or a revelation that his followers should accept without questioning. So this is very, very important to understand Denis' work and why Denis is so concerned with evidence of the human survival and evidence of reincarnation and other processes of spiritual life. This wise God could only send different messages with similar content, according to the intellectual patterns of each culture and even each particular creature. So if you have an alternative view, a non-conformist view of God, religion, or the afterlife, and according to your particular private view of the subjects, you act with a morally recommendable conduct, it would be appreciated. No one could possibly question your beliefs if they lead to consequence, to moral consequence that could be appreciated by everyone. So that morality and the adoration to the source of life and intelligent order of the world should constitute the true religion above personal creeds. True religion, therefore, would be a rational religion, a natural, universal, non-cultural, or at least should try to be a non-cultural religion or cult, and unrelated to particular expressions of faith, doctrines, dogmas, and personal revelations. Having such a model, what could Denis possibly think? Well, Leon Denis started his work as a philosopher devoted to the arguments and evidence for the immortality of the soul and its consequences to our view of the world. So Leon Denis' main concern was to prove Kardec right and to show that recent scientific research on psychic phenomena, metapsychic, and modern spiritualism, even theosophy, and all developments of modern spiritualism in the turn to the 20th century led to the conclusion that Kardec's work was quite consistent or played in favor of Kardec's work. So a good deal of his work may not seem immediately original, but the way he connected contemporary to his time, contemporary scientific research with Kardec's philosophy, with the Spiritist and the Spirit's philosophy, was quite original in the sense that he actualized the discussion. And as much he was also a sort of natural theologian in a very broad sense of the word, concerned with the problems of suffering, the purpose of life, and how cosmic order could possibly accommodate God's supreme goodness, along with the dramas and tragedies of life. Well, Kardec developed these ideas quite a lot, but Leon Denis definitively added to it, and he refined Kardec thoughts and conclusions and arguments about the possibility of harmonization between human suffering and injustice and evil with the idea of the supreme God, the supreme just and wise God that we so much need. Maybe even more than Kardec, Denis believed that it would be irrational to deny the idea of God, that the idea of God was strictly necessary to make sense of the order of the world, that is the laws of nature, and also to make sense of the purpose of life and the meaning of life. So that the removal of this idea, the death of God and other cultural developments of his time were quite shocking for him. And he understood the consequences of this death of God as clear evidence that this idea was flawed and condemned to be substituted in the future. Which were these consequences? Well, he basically blamed the death of God for nihilism, for vicious existentialism, for materialism, and a sort of consumerism that was already present in his time. And he envisioned all these very new vices as outcomes and consequences of the supposed death of God. So pretty similar to William James, who was a pragmatist that said, well, we cannot prove that God does exist, but we can say that one lives better if he or she believes that God does exist. Pretty much like that. Denis also argued that people would, in practice, be better people and better persons and happier if they did believe in the immortality of the soul, in God, and in endless progression and development of the human character. He managed to accommodate these apparent irregularities by developing one of Kardec's dearest concepts, the concept of universal development. According to Kardec's spiritual message to the world, from Zoroaster and Plato to Francis of Assisi and Isaac Newton, the perennial message of pretty much every religion and moral philosophy in this world was quite clearly directed to the moral and intellectual development of our spirit, so that it could break the chains, the spirit could break the chains that submit itself to matter. The proper name of the chains, the passions that bound us to a sort of state of slavery to matter. Their proper names are selfishness and pride, and the more we can overcome these animal conditionings in favor of rational and spiritual grandiosity, the closer we would be to happiness. Now, the main question is, what exactly did Leon Denis add to this philosophy, to Kardec's philosophy? Well, he added the heart of a mystical and a poet that allowed him to handle the Spiritist concepts in a radical new way compared to Kardec. He gave to Spiritism aesthetical depth and reacted to the early existential nihilistic philosophy with a vision of unparalleled solace. And he did that emphasizing the idea of reincarnation as the only, in his words, the only means to rationally explain how suffering, how injustice, how the separation of classes and the divisions of people in many ways, in cultural ways, in terms of different talents, different dispositions to good and evil, how these divisions could be explained and harmonize and accommodate to the idea, the very important idea of a supreme, intelligent, wise, just, and good God. Through this idea, through the idea of reincarnation, one could see life as a chapter of the book instead of the whole story, instead of the resume of a story enclosed in itself. And if we envision our lives as one chapter of a book, this chapter can contain and can present very unpleasant paragraphs, experiences, and losses. And even though it can be in the long run justified by the previous and the consequent chapters, if we acquire the habit, if we train ourselves, if we get used to understand our own lives as lesser than the ultimate battle for good and evil, we have better chance to envision evolution and progress and the development of human spirits, and have a rational expectation, a rational hope that in the end of the run, we will have acquired the virtues, the talents, the qualities, the disposition, the willingness to good that are necessary, that are all necessary to a happier life and to overcome these temptations or influences of passions over our character. Well, I will end more or less here. This was my short and humble presentation of Leon Denis' philosophy. I really hope it was at least understandable. And I would strongly recommend you to read Denis' works, because maybe more than a competent philosopher, he's quite a master genius of literary presentation of these ideas. And although he does not write exactly romance or literary works, the literary quality, the poetic quality of his work, even the rhetoric quality of his work is quite charming, is quite enchanting. And you can be enthralled by all the richness and the exuberance of his constructions, style, and vocabulary. So I really strongly recommend that you have contact with Leon Denis' books, because they present these ideas in a very attractive way that is also a sort of solace for the spirit.
Wow. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Umberto. That was brilliant. And I know there's a lot of wonderful comments coming in at the side. All in agreement. Absolutely excellent. Do you know what? This may sound a little bit material, but it does work. You know when somebody is talking and holding people, because I see the viewing figures, and when they stay constant, you know that people are like, oh yeah, I'm engrossed in this. I'm not just flitting, you know, what's on the other side. So you held your own. It was really good. But that is just confirmation that people are actually sat there listening, taking it in. So if anybody's got any questions at all or any comments they'd like to make, please put those into the chat box at the side. We will bring those up. Fabricio, over to you, sir.
I was actually just going to read some of the comments in there. It's popping up loads of really good comments in there, Umberto. You definitely got the public there on your side. So we have a comment here from June, say, brilliant, Umberto. That was a wonderful explanation of the Spiritism movement and human condition. Well done. Wow, indeed, absolutely fascinating. Excellent talk. Wonderful, thank you. So it's really good comments coming up there. So yes, again, if anyone has got any question to pop into Umberto, we are open to the questions and answer session now. Feel free to pop up any questions on the chat. So I think one from me, Umberto, is you touched in one point where you're talking about, because I guess for many people in the UK, when you say about Spiritism, that terminology is probably new to many of people.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned about the views that Kardec and Leon Denis had about the Spiritism philosophy as not something that considered to be another religion. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, this is probably one of the main points. If we consider Spiritism a religion, we would be not only unfaithful to Kardec and his proposal, but also quite contradictory with the principles exposed by Spiritism. This because one of the main principles is one of the main tenets of Spiritism is that we should never accept any idea and any belief for granted, even the dearest principles of Spiritism or for Spiritism, like the principle of reincarnation, the principle of immortality, the idea of communication with the deceased, the idea that we are always in development to a higher state of consciousness, the idea that we have a moral order of the world, the idea of God itself, they can be questioned. And if you have to swallow any part of the doctrine, you are probably hearing a personal version, a deviation, or some sort of descent vision of Spiritism, which is quite okay. It's not a problem in itself, but it is a problem if we present it as Spiritism and as Kardecian, or the way Kardec actually thought. Interesting enough, it was not only the merit of Kardec, the development of Spiritism. He worked in close contact with deceased spirits, and these spirits never used prophetic language or suggested that Kardec should blindly believe them and obey them or anything of the sort. On the very contrary, they suggest and recommended that Kardec should question everything, that he should be humble and hear the advice of the spirits, as long as they were in conformity with reason and common sense. And if science and common sense should be denied in any point in favor of Spiritism, that would be treason, or a sort of bankruptcy, or a sort of fail from the side of Spiritism. On the contrary, where we have conflict with science, Spiritism is probably the wrong part of the equation. What makes me particularly happy about this idea is that we are invited to, with an autonomous lucidity and clarity of mind, to judge everything with our own intellectual capacity. We do not have to accept anything or follow anything just because it supposedly came from spirits. On the contrary, we can judge spirit communications as persons that are speaking to us, that are giving advice to us. Some people are just unwise, and some people lie. Some people are evil, and they do not want our best. When people die, they remain people, and they have the same personalities, inclinations, talents, dispositions, and they are significantly changed, but they are pretty much the same persons. And therefore, we should deal with them. We should think about them as the people that they were, the people that they were. I'm not sure if it's straight to the point, but
you did, because it's interesting. I only asked the question because we do get a lot of people in the UK say, but what is Spiritism? That is a new terminology. And then is that a new religion? And then we try to explain that it's not a religion. And then has got, but it was, yes.
Kardec said that he wanted a new name to make a distinction between the broader spiritualist movement, because we had many spiritualist perspectives inside modern spiritualism at the time. We had evangelicalism and some far consequence of American awakening. We also had very secular spiritualists, especially in England, but also in Germany and other European countries, also in America. We had, as I mentioned, theosophy in the time of Denis, and the occult, and many sorts of Catholic or evangelical spiritualism in the time of Kardec, in the beginning of the 19th century. So Kardec did not want to add to this pile of spiritualism. He wanted to make a methodology and a sort of system that could present a coherent approach to the subject, to spiritual phenomena, to mediumship basically, but also other sorts of psychic phenomena. I'm sorry. And therefore he wanted to coin a new name, but he also stresses that spiritualism is the father of spiritism. All spiritists are spiritualists. So it is a branch, it is a section that tries to specify a possible philosophy from the greater spiritualist movement. It's not in any point in contradiction.
There is a question from Bob. Just before I ask you the question, I'm just going to say, because we know when the Kardec was writing the Spirit's book, all the writing on the Spirit book was dictated by the Spirit, and that was the work that Kardec done in conjunction with the Spirit. Now, linked up with the question from Bob, he says, did Denis put forward his philosophy mostly as his own rationale, or instead as the revelation to him from the spiritual world?
Well, Kardec especially had a quite new understanding of the word revelation. In the Genesis, his last book, he make a distinction between scientific revelation or natural revelation and the supposed supernatural revelation. Well, normal revelation or scientific revelation was the act of revealing the laws of nature through scientific research. Religious revelation, or the supposed supernatural revelation, which was not supernatural for Kardec, he believed that it was as natural as our experience with the material world. It was only invisible and intelligent, but otherwise as natural as the material world. Well, this sort of revelation, the revelation of Jesus Christ, the revelation of Muhammad, the revelation of Buddha, and other sorts of direct revelation from the part of the spirits should be equated with the natural revelation or the scientific revelation. Pretty much what Enlightenment philosophers thought about the same subject when they tried to develop a rational theology or a natural theology. Many philosophers in the 18th century developed this idea of a investigation of nature on one hand, and the revelation from the outside, from the other side of reality on the other hand. And since John Locke, for example, the main idea behind this double source of revelation was the idea that God could never contradict itself. I like to use the word itself instead of himself. I'm not sure if it sounds nice in English, but God could not fall in contradiction. It should be at least more intelligent than us, and therefore natural revelation or revelation through human effort and through the work of science, art, philosophy, civilization should mirror more or less what the spiritual or religious revelation is unveiling to us. And many of these philosophers, like John Locke, even Isaac Newton, not exactly a philosopher, but he thought about the subject, Leibniz, Lessing, and Wolff, Kant, even Kant, many of these philosophers believed that this sort of dual evolution was proved by history. If we analyze history, we should be able to spot the parallelism of these patterns. Sometimes we advance or we make more progress in our work, through our work, and sometimes we are pretty stubborn and we need help from outside. And that's when God sent us some older brothers as teachers. This was an idea very present in Lessing's work, the education of human race. Human race is educated by God through these two basic processes: the processes of direct intervention from God, but it's not a miraculous supernatural intervention. It's just a person, an older spirit that is born with talents and faculties and capacities that we nowadays lack, that we now lack, or God just gave us the faculty of thinking, the capacity of willful effort, and through our work we can push evolution forward faster.
I have got another question that comes from Joanne. She says, this might be a naive question, since I'm new to spiritualism. I love it. My question is that you said spiritualism is not a religion. Why are there churches?
Well, because we have a religious experience. It is not a religion in the sense of a doctrine and a creed that tells us how we should behave, what we can or cannot do, what we are or are not allowed to do. But there is great profit in gathering in together to share the spiritual experience. And there will be never, I believe, I suppose there will be never a moment in our future history when we will stop doing that. I'm not sure if it's an exhaustive answer, but I would point to the fact that even science now, social scientists have been revealing the connection between shared worship and shared spiritual experience, shared religious experience, and mental health, physical health, and the general state of existential well-being. We are social creatures. We are, I'm philosophizing now, but we could say that we are made to share this greatest experience, the best part in us, and we long for getting along and gathering together and to share the deepest experiences that we can possibly have.
Thank you, Umberto. So today, well, I would say tonight, is a very special day. There are two things that we are celebrating. So we are celebrating the Leon Denis anniversary of 175. And also the very day today, we are celebrating the 160 Kardec's book called The Medium's Book. I'm just going to ask Lawrence to put it up there for us on the screen. So it's a very special occasion. It's double celebration. So we have Leon Denis anniversary, and also we have the anniversary of Kardec's book, The Medium's Book. So it's a very, very special evening and event for us tonight. So we have a few more questions coming up on Facebook, and then I think I will take one more question, and then I will hand it back to you, Umberto, for any final consideration, and then I will hand it over to Lawrence for the closing prayer. Our friend Sue say, you said it's not religion. What do you mean by worship, and who are you worshipping?
Well, we call it God because it's culturally easier to relate to the concept, but it's certainly not a God that would have the flaws and the limitations that any particular religion could possibly relate to it. You could also call the intelligence of the universe, the creator, the source of life, Buddhic nature, or whatever idea that stresses the spiritual, free intelligence, just and good source of reality, or ground of reality. The philosopher Schelling said very cleverly, I think, that God is the ground of being and the father of being. It is not the father of things, but the father of being. That means existence is a manifestation or an expression of this source. And again, we are used to call it God. Some people may not identify it as the best definition, but it is not a big problem. What we mean is more profound and even impossible to label or to conceptualize properly. But we have a cultural problem with these concepts when we talk about immortality of the soul, about an afterlife, about God, about the purpose of life, and about good and evil, and about religious experiences and the adoration of this supreme source of being. We automatically relate it to the more or less flawed religious experiences and institutions that we know for a long time in history. But these acts are not under the monopoly of these institutions or these particular experiences with the spiritual world, with the source of reality that we name God. And we have to move forward to a more modern understanding of our religious experiences that are not dependent on institutional religions. So again, we may join, we may gather in a place to worship or to have spiritual experiences, or to share our knowledge about philosophy or spiritual wisdom. and not necessarily believe that we are followers of a church in an old-fashioned sense of this term. I'm not sure if I made myself clear, but I think it's a great subject. We have to talk more about that because we are in the middle of the process of changing our mentality. And in the future, we can imagine that we have a condition where people will have religious experiences, mystical experiences, spiritual experiences, and a spiritual understanding of life because they are enlightened and because they develop themselves as conscious beings, and not because they are related to a tradition that allows or tells them how they should have these experiences.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Umberto. So for those that is listening to us and asking you questions, I post on the chat a website that is www.buss.org.uk. It's www.buss.org.uk. So for those that is interested to download for free the Medium's, the Kardec book, the Medium's book, it's free for downloading from that website. So we're celebrating the book, and then you can get it downloaded for free on the www.buss.org.uk. So is there any closing remarks before we can go to the closing prayer, Bert?
I would only like to say that I'm very glad and even flattered to receive your encouragement, your kind words and compliments, because as you probably realized, I was very anxious in this presentation and slightly insecure about my capacity of presenting you something with some sense. So I'm glad that you enjoyed this.
Thank you. So Lawrence, over to you for a closing prayer.
Thank you, and thank you, Umberto. If you were nervous, it did not come across. It was wonderful. Thank you. So once more, dear friends, just join in to that stillness within, that peace, that balance, that harmony. And give thanks for all the things that we do have. For each of us are enduring restrictions, constraints, and denials and pleasures of meeting loved ones, friends, and family. But we're all blessed with that knowledge, that understanding, that all things are transient. All things on the physical plane are but a brief glimpse in the bright light of eternity. And even though we may be thousands of miles apart from each other this night, we're all united under the same sky, with the same thoughts, the same feelings, the same needs and the same love. And through nights like this, we are learning, growing and evolving, challenging the old and sowing the seeds of the new. So we give a blessing on all those dear ones throughout this year who will dedicate their time, their knowledge, their resources and their energy to assist us in that growth of spiritual development. Amen.
Thank you, Lawrence. So our next meeting will be on the 29th of January. We're going to start a new series of the psychological series by the Spirit Joanna de Angelis. And our next guest speaker is Dr. Gelson. He will be talking in Portuguese, but will be simultaneously translated by Anna Sinclair. There is going to be many series of the psychological series of Joanna de Angelis. And I look forward to see you all. thank you very much for everyone that has been watching us and be with us. I just want to read a few comments that is popping up here from our dear friends on Facebook. They say, wow, food for much thoughts. Umberto did a brilliant presentation. Thank you and well done. Thank you. A wonderfully fascinating evening. Love for all brothers in all countries. So it's really good comments coming up there. So I would say good night to everyone on Facebook, to our friends, to our members from the Spiritist Society of Bournemouth, our friends from the Pool Christian Spiritualist Church. My gratitude to you, Umberto and Lawrence, for being here with us tonight. Thank you very much.
Equally.
Good night, everybody.